Hi, and welcome to the Healthy Family Law Attorney. I'm Tom Marks with the Marks Law Firm in Orlando, Florida, and we have another interviewee today. We have a special guest, Robert Crews with Solutions Group Accounting. Robert has about 10 years of diversified experience in all areas of tax, accounting, business consulting, and litigation. He brings a lot of knowledge to this area. He focuses on tax, accounting, litigation, litigation support, and that's a lot of what we're going to talk about today. Forensic accounting, again, what we're going to talk about, and valuation services. So Robert is a graduate of Stetson University. He has his CPA license, is a member of the National Association of Divorce Professionals, the Collaborative Family Law Group of Central Florida, the Florida Institute of Certified Public Accountants, and he was born and raised in Florida. I also was born and raised in Florida. So Robert, welcome aboard.
Thanks, Tom. Thanks for having me.
I'm glad to have you on here. So Robert, tell our audience a little bit about yourself.
Well, outside of what you've already informed everybody of, live here in Central Florida, like you mentioned, born and raised in Southwest Florida. Married with 3 kids. I have twins, boy-girl twins that are 5.5. They're turning 6 in June, and I have a 2-year-old boy. We are baseball fanatics. Love playing golf. Actually played baseball at Stetson University, which is where I met my wife, which is where she played softball there as well. So we're athlete families.
Well, I didn't know that. My son played baseball also. We were kind of a baseball family, and I didn't know that you played baseball at Stetson. I think I've heard that Stetson has a really good baseball program.
Yeah, in 2011, we were 12th in the country. We were pretty good when we were there.
That's awesome. Well, good. Well, so you're a family man. You've been in the Central Florida area your whole life. So tell our audience how you help family law clients through the family law process as a CPA, accountant, forensic expert.
Right. Yeah. During the divorce process, it's not just law. There's a lot of numbers. What do the parties make in income? What are all the assets and liabilities? And so sometimes during that process, I need to do an income analysis. I need to determine what the husband is making, what the wife is making, valuating assets, whether that be a business, whether that be a pension, whether that be, defined benefit plans and determining stock option plans, things of that sort. So quite frequently, my job is to do the due diligence for the client, for the attorney that has brought me on board, and sometimes provide transparency. Quite frequently, I act as a neutral expert, whether that be going through the collaborative process or even through a typical litigated case. So without getting into the weeds, that's how I help.
All right, well, good. So as a financial expert in a case, what kind of documents are you able to produce to support the family law attorney and his or her clients?
Yeah, good question. Quite frequently, I'm asked to request certain documents, right? So every case is completely different. Every case requires some set of different documents. And so it's my job to ensure that we have the right amount or the right documents to make a educated decision. And so that ranges from bank statements, credit card statements, as simple as that, investment account statements, or just any sort of monthly statements, or requesting information for a pension plan, whether that's going to be pension plan documents, asking for a vesting schedule, asking for, stock option vesting schedules, whether that's including, when it was vested, when it was granted, when they're exercised. So that's a very wide range of different documents that, quite frequently I would request. And again, every case is completely different.
Right. So I know there's a significant difference between being in the role of litigation support for the family law attorney in a contested litigation case and then being in a collaborative case. You and I have been on a collaborative team together. I'm collaboratively trained as an attorney, family law attorney, and you're collaboratively trained as a financial neutral. Can you tell us, I think the financial collaborative neutral does a lot more of the heavy lifting in regarding the financial documents than the family law attorneys do in that arena. Can you tell us what kind of documents you produce in a collaborative case?
What kind of documents I request or do I produce?
That you produce, for the parties, in terms of financial documents.
Right. So in a collaborative process, I create something called an equitable distribution worksheet. And essentially this identifies all the assets, cash investments, retirement accounts, real estate or real property, personal property, business interest, any trust interest, and then just any other assets such as, vehicles, credit cards, et cetera, et cetera. So that is the primary document that we work off through a collaborative process. Quite frequently, I would share my screen and make changes to this worksheet as the meeting progresses. A lot of attorneys like to see it real time. So I do all of my stuff in Excel. I don't have the family law software or anything of that sort. But other items such as, I do an income analysis, right? And that would include identifying all income, making adjustments for family law purposes. And that's a wide range of different items such as, in-kind or reimbursed income. Then there's something called what I call a net available income. Essentially, we're tax affecting the income and determining the net available income for the husband and the wife, for the parties, to determine if someone has an ability to pay, if someone has a need, for spousal support discussions. Also prepare a child support guideline worksheet if there's children involved. Doing business valuations, pension valuations. So it's a wide range again, but all of which we can handle or that we do in a collaborative process.
Right. And I want to get to that business valuation process in a minute. In the sense of, like you mentioned, the child support guideline worksheet, I've done a prior video on my Wednesday legal videos on what goes into how you put together a child support guideline worksheet and all that goes into it. In the litigation setting, the attorneys will typically do that. In the collaborative setting, you as the financial neutral do that. Just like in regards to the equitable distribution worksheet, I know I've seen you put together financial affidavits. I also have 2 videos on what goes into the equitable distribution worksheet and what goes into the financial affidavit, which I think is in the litigation's perspective, the most important financial document. So you're putting together all of those documents. In the collaborative setting, you're a neutral. What does that mean as opposed to what the attorneys are?
Right. So typically in litigation support, I have one client or I have a party of a divorce case that will hire me. My services are directed by the attorney that's representing that party. And in more of a collaborative approach in the collaborative law process, my job is to maintain neutrality. And essentially what that means is I'm providing due diligence and efforts for both the husband and the wife. And that's a wide range of different things. And so it's to increase transparency through this process. And quite frequently, I'm sure, Tom, you've seen this quite a bit. There's always, not always, but quite frequently in a marriage, there's the financial person, right? Whether that be the husband or whether that be the wife. And so I, as the neutral, need to make sure that whoever is not the financial person understands their financial life. And so I have to take an extra due diligence and to ensure that the numbers and what I'm coming up with is transparent and they build confidence through this process.
Right. And I know that it's so incredibly helpful to have a financial neutral in a collaborative case because the parties can rest assured you're not on one side or the other. You're there to facilitate, support, provide that transparency on the financial numbers so everybody can be comfortable. And I've done a couple of videos on collaborative. If anyone wants to check those out, I get into some pretty significant detail on that. But in the sense of actually talking to a financial neutral like you in a collaborative case, I think it's really helpful. I know there's a high trust level that typically forms in the collaborative process, but having you as a financial neutral and a mental health neutral are critical in the collaborative process. How many collaboratives have you done so far? Do you know?
So I'm currently in one now, and I have done, I believe I'm at 5 now.
Okay,
I've
that's
done 5
awesome.
collaborative cases. I got collaborative trained. I want to say it was the end of 2000, November or December of 2018. So been collaborative trained now for a couple of years.
Yeah, and collaborative is really a growing area
Right.
because it offers so many benefits, confidentiality and um, transparency, but also there's some real benefits of the parties not having to file the financial affidavits and the settlement agreement. So it's not in the public record. That's like a really important factor for some people.
Right.
And I think it's just so helpful to see families who can work together to set goals for how they're going to raise their children and look at the things they have that are common goals rather than being adversarial. So,
Right.
I'm go ahead. I'm sorry.
In my opinion, I think if you do have a family, and what I mean, if you have children, right, I think it shows, maturity and the ability to even have a relationship after the divorce is final for the sake of your children. I think it's such a great process. I really do.
Right. And of course, the legislature has passed the statute now that says that all family law attorneys must give their family law clients at least the option to choose collaborative. So,
fantastic news.
Right, and it's great, and it's now the Florida Supreme Court's come up with all the rules around collaborative, so that it's really a really strong structure around that. Okay, so let's talk about your forensic work. Tell us what you do in terms of like a forensic financial analysis.
Yeah, the book definition of forensic accounting is, the use of your accounting skills to investigate fraud or embezzlement and to analyze financial information for the use of legal proceedings, right? So I believe that's what, maybe not word for word, but the book definition of what forensic financial accounting is. And so in litigation support and for family law purposes, that could result in a wide range of things. So in family law, in a more of a litigated approach, there's something called, commingled, right? Or commingling assets. And so quite frequently, I would have to put on my investigative hat and do some sort of forensic work to identify if there is commingling, at least if that's, a concern. But also, when you're outside of the collaborative process, quite frequently, some parties are not completely transparent. So it's my job to identify all assets, whether that be, a tracing schedules, tracing assets. Also, more importantly, making sure I identify all income sources for family law purposes. And so quite frequently, I have to get my forensic hat on and I'll go through documents and typically do some tracing or, whatever the particular case calls. But in family law purposes, that's what my forensic financial analysis typically entails.
Right. And I think you have to often do more work in a litigation setting with your forensic financial analysis because you've got to dig and find hidden assets sometimes where there's not that transparency, where in a litigation setting, one of the parties may be trying to hide assets.
Yeah, I mean, it's not uncommon for my fees in a litigated support case to be more than collaborative. Actually, I think that's 90% of the time that is the case.
Right. And I think that's, again, another benefit of collaborative if the parties can agree to voluntarily go through that process and be transparent and reduce the costs for that. All right, so let's talk about something else that you do. I have clients oftentimes that own a business, and so it's very difficult for two parties to stay, in the business working it together. So one party's typically going to either buy the other party out, or they're going to sell the business, and they need to know what is the business worth. So tell us what you do in a business valuation.
So frequently in a business valuation, we utilize a set of different approaches and different methods. There's a lot of different methods. The most common used, approaches are going to be the asset, the income, and the market approach. And so without getting too into the details, ultimately what happens is I put a set of procedures together to ultimately identify what the economic value is of a business. And typically that would entail a tangible piece, meaning, something that you can actually touch, or an intangible piece. And the intangible piece for family law purposes is very important to identify for the sake of determining what the marital assets are. Determining whether it's enterprise goodwill or personal goodwill.
Right. And, we might do a follow-up interview sometime to really get into the nuts and bolts and all the details of a business valuation, because I know how involved that is. And I know you could talk on it for 45 minutes to an hour, like you said.
Right.
But I think that's helpful. And the purpose of the channel is because I believe families matter. I want to provide that hope and help to families to successfully navigate the family law process in a healthy way. And so that helps families do that, to have a proper valuation of that asset. So next question, you're a CPA. What kind of tax advice do you give in a family law case?
Yeah, so as I go through this process, obviously, I first started out in this career preparing tax returns, ultimately in the tax arena. And so I always result back to ensuring that when we're splitting assets, or when we're identifying assets, or taking into consideration the income analysis, et cetera, or how a parenting plan an MSA, a settlement agreement, is put together in terms of, the children, I always have this tax hat on. And so whether that's a matter of tax affecting retirement benefits, whether that's taken into consideration, what tax filing status a certain party will have in determining what their true and accurate net available income is. Quite frequently, I see, other attorneys or other experts just using a flat rate that really is not indicative of their actual tax situation moving forward. And so I think that's, a piece of the puzzle that is quite often overlooked, and it can result in a significant number, especially if, income numbers are high. Quite frequently, I also see, being tax affecting retirement benefits at a general 20% rule. So I've taken another level to that and actually trying to determine what their R&D will be in retirement, along with other assets that they currently have, and really try to determine what their income would be when they are taking, retirement benefits, to determine what their effective rate will actually be. So, my process in the litigation support and how I apply taxes is a critical role, in determining a lot of different things.
Well, I think that's important, and I think that's helpful to our audience. So I have one last important substantive question for you. What are the most commonly missed assets and liabilities in a family law case?
Most common missed asset, two things that come to mind. the escrow balance on a mortgage. And I have seen in the past where parties or one of the parties will send off estimated payments to the IRS, and they'll have a big, large, estimated payment balance of 100 grand or whatever with the Internal Revenue Service. So quite frequently, my job is to ensure we request account transcripts to see what their balance is with the Internal Revenue Service.
I don't think most people would think of those two things, the escrow balance on a mortgage or the IRS payments like that. All right, what about liabilities?
Right, so this is kind of, actually just experienced this the other day. A margin account balance on an investment account. So frequently what I've seen in the past, so are you familiar with what margin is with an investment account? Essentially, you're borrowing against your securities to ultimately buy more securities.
Right.
So frequently I've seen that liability missed, but actually, I didn't even think about this. A third item on the asset side is the credit card rewards account balance. Amex, those points. That's worth something. So frequently, I've seen that missed as well.
Yeah, I see a lot of that too. That's why it's so important to really get into the details on these, to have an equitable distribution worksheet, to have a forensic CPA who knows tax law, knows how to really ferret out hidden assets and debts and so forth. I always recommend to my clients that we get a credit report so that oftentimes one spouse might take out a credit card in the other spouse's name or include the other spouse on the credit card, run up a huge debt that the other spouse isn't even aware of. So we want to make sure we get a credit report to avoid that.
I've seen, furniture credit cards where they had a 0% deal 5 years ago. It's been paid off for a couple years, but now another party is utilizing that credit card that they had totally forgotten about.
That's a great point. So I always advise my clients when they're going to cancel a credit card, not to just cut it up and think it's taken care of, but you actually have to, in my mind, put it in writing to the credit card company and get confirmation from the credit card company that they've closed the account. I've had family law clients come in that have already been divorced. Someone else handled it, and they thought those credit cards were torn up, and then their former spouse just applied for a replacement card and started charging on it. And the credit card company then goes after both parties, and it can be a huge minefield there. All right, Robert, I think we've hit all the substantive issues, but this, of course, is the Healthy Family Law Attorney channel. And I always ask my interviewee, do you have a healthy tip for our audience?
Yes, I've seen the bad and ugly, and I've seen the good through this process. And I will tell you, maintaining transparency, keeping ethical, being ethical, keeping moral values, and trying to maintain a relationship with the opposing party after this is the healthiest way to go through this process, which ultimately results back to the collaborative process we've been talking about this entire meeting.
Right, and that's so much healthier for the kids if mom and dad are still co-parenting well together, working together, communicating, and not being at odds. I agree with you.
Right. Yes,
thank you so much, Robert. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. To our audience, like and subscribe, hit that bell icon. I would love for you to be a part of the channel. We're putting out new legal videos every Wednesday, and these professional expert interviews every Friday. So don't miss a beat. Thank you for being a part of the channel today. Robert, thank you for being part of the channel today.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it, Tom.
All right. Have a great one. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.